What's up, football fans? If you're a Green Bay Packers supporter or a fantasy football manager, you've been holding your breath all week waiting for news on Josh Jacobs. The star running back has been battling a knee injury, and with a massive Thanksgiving showdown against the Detroit Lions on the horizon, everyone's been asking the same question. Is Josh Jacobs playing? Well, I've got all the latest updates, injury details, and what this means for the Packers' playoff push. Plus, if you've got Jacobs on your fantasy team, stick around because we're breaking down exactly what to expect from him this week. Let's dive in. All right, let's rewind a bit and talk about how we got here. Josh Jacobs picked up this knee injury back in Week 11 during the Packers' road matchup against the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium. And if you know anything about MetLife's playing surface, you know it's notorious for being brutal on players' joints. During the first half of that game, Jacobs went down after jamming his knee into the turf. He initially headed to the medical tent for evaluation, tried to come back and give it a go, but ultimately couldn't continue. The veteran running back just couldn't move the way he needed to, and the Packers made the smart call to pull him out. The diagnosis? A knee contusion that caused significant swelling. Jacobs himself told reporters that the swelling in his knee had decreased by about 50 to 60% after the initial injury. He explained that when any area of your knee swells up like that, it becomes incredibly difficult to bend. He said he could handle the pain, but he just couldn't execute the movements properly. And for a running back who relies on explosiveness and cutting ability, that's a non-starter. Fast forward to Week 12, and the Packers face the Minnesota Vikings. Jacobs managed to log a couple of limited practice sessions on Thursday and Friday after sitting out Wednesday, but Green Bay listed him as questionable heading into game day. Ultimately, the team decided to hold him out, which proved to be the right decision. They didn't want to rush him back and risk making the injury worse, especially with a crucial divisional game against Detroit coming up on Thanksgiving. Now here's the news everyone's been waiting for. Josh Jacobs is officially active for Week 13 against the Lions. This week, Jacobs participated in limited practices 3 times, which was enough for the medical staff and coaching team to clear him for action. The big green light came on Wednesday when the Packers officially removed him from the injury report. That's the best news Packers fans could have asked for heading into this massive Thanksgiving divisional battle. Head coach Matt LaFleur and the training staff clearly feel confident that Jacobs has recovered enough to contribute. The swelling's gone down significantly, his mobility is back, and he's been practicing, even if it was limited, without any major setbacks. For a player of Jacobs' caliber, getting him back on the field is absolutely crucial for Green Bay's offensive game plan. But here's where it gets interesting. While Jacobs was sidelined in Week 12, backup running back Emmanuel Wilson stepped up in a major way. Wilson recorded 107 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns against Minnesota, which was the most rushing yards in any single game for the Packers this entire season. That performance showed that Wilson isn't just a backup. He's a legitimate weapon who can carry the load when called upon. So now the Packers have a bit of a luxury problem. Do they ride the hot hand with Wilson, or do they give the bulk of carries back to Jacobs, the guy they're paying $11.3 million this season? My guess? They'll lean on Jacobs as the primary back, but don't be surprised if Wilson gets more touches than usual. Keeping Jacobs fresh through this brutal stretch of the schedule while also rewarding Wilson's production would be a smart move. Let's talk about why this Thanksgiving game is so monumentally important. The Packers and Lions are locked in a fierce battle for NFC North supremacy. Both teams are just 1 game behind the Chicago Bears for first place in the division, and the timing couldn't be better for Green Bay. The Bears have a tough road game against the Philadelphia Eagles on Friday, so if the Packers can knock off Detroit on Thanksgiving, they'll be in the driver's seat. Plus, Green Bay is scheduled to play Chicago twice in the next 3 weeks, which means they control their own destiny when it comes to winning the division. A win in Detroit would be absolutely massive for their playoff positioning. Now, there's some fun history here, too. The Packers and Lions have met on Thanksgiving 22 times, with these matchups happening every year from 1951 to 1963. Detroit holds a slight edge in the holiday series with a 12-9-1 record, but the Packers dominate the overall head-to-head matchup across all games. In fact, just this season back in Week 1, Green Bay defeated Detroit 27-13. The last time these two teams faced off on Thanksgiving was in 2023, when the Packers went into Detroit and pulled off an unexpected 29-22 victory. Green Bay will be looking to recreate that magic and make it 2 Thanksgiving wins in a row over their division rivals. As for the betting lines, the Packers are currently 2.5-point favorites with an over-under total of 49.5 points. That suggests Vegas expects a high-scoring affair, which makes sense given the offensive firepower both teams possess. And that's actually good news for Josh Jacobs. Before we get into the fantasy implications, let's appreciate what kind of season Josh Jacobs has been having. The veteran running back has been an absolute workhorse for Green Bay since signing his 4-year, $48 million deal in free agency. Through 17 games in 2024, Jacobs racked up 301 carries for 1,329 rushing yards and scored an absurd 16 touchdowns. He also added 36 receptions for 342 receiving yards and another touchdown through the air. Those numbers earned him a Pro Bowl selection, his 3rd career nod. What's really impressive is his consistency in the red zone. Jacobs scored at least 1 rushing touchdown in 8 consecutive games to close out the 2024 regular season. That kind of touchdown production makes him an every-week starter in fantasy, regardless of matchup difficulty. In his previous meeting with the Lions earlier this season, Jacobs carried the ball 18 times for 66 yards and scored 3 touchdowns. Yeah, you heard that right, 3 touchdowns. Even though the yardage wasn't spectacular, he absolutely feasted in scoring situations, which is exactly what fantasy managers want to see. All right, fantasy managers, this is the section you've been waiting for. Should you start Josh Jacobs in Week 13? The short answer, yes, absolutely. Jacobs ranks as the RB7 overall in fantasy points per game this season, which makes him an every-week starter regardless of the matchup. Even though he's coming off a knee injury and missed last week's game, the fact that he's been cleared to play means you should feel confident rolling him out there. Now here's the reality check. The Detroit Lions defense has been stout against the run this year, allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to running backs. That's a tough matchup on paper, so you might want to temper your expectations for massive yardage. Don't expect Jacobs to break off a 150-yard performance. But here's the silver lining. This game has shootout potential written all over it. With a 49.5-point over-under, both offenses are expected to move the ball and find the end zone multiple times. And we already know that Jacobs is the Packers' go-to guy in the red zone. He scored 3 touchdowns against this same Lions defense earlier this season, so even if the yardage is limited, Jacobs can absolutely salvage his fantasy day with touchdown production. Another thing to consider is the workload. Emmanuel Wilson played well last week, but Jacobs is still the bell cow back when healthy. Expect him to get 15 to 20 touches with multiple goal line opportunities. In fantasy football, volume is king, and Jacobs will get plenty of it. My advice? Start Josh Jacobs with confidence, but set realistic expectations. You're looking at a floor of 60-70 yards with touchdown upside. If he finds the end zone once or twice, which is very possible given his red zone usage, you'll be thrilled you kept him in your lineup. So there you have it, folks. Josh Jacobs is officially active and ready to roll for the Green Bay Packers on Thanksgiving Day against the Detroit Lions. It's a huge divisional showdown with playoff implications, and having their star running back in the lineup is exactly what the Packers needed. Whether you're a Packers fan or a fantasy manager, this is must-watch football. The NFC North title could very well be on the line, and you know Jacobs is going to be hungry to make up for lost time after missing last week. What do you think? Is Jacobs going to have a monster game? Or will the Lions defense keep him in check? Drop your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more NFL content all season long. I'll catch you on the next one. Happy Thanksgiving and go Pack Go!